because of the steps, you're not changed 180 degrees. You're brought back 360 to the person who your higher power made you to be.
You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 174 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. This week, I'm happy to be sharing a conversation that I had with podcast listener M. I originally read his email on episode 167 back in August, and as in the case of most emails, I abbreviated his name to just the first initial for anonymity, and we decided to stick with that for this episode. While we were scheduling a time to record, M sent me another email that I wanted to read here, along with a reading suggested in both the email and during our conversation. It says, "Happy Friday morning, Jason. As a newish podcast listener and one who skips around listening to different episodes, I recall different times when you've read emails. You may also say, I'm behind on emails. I am very behind on emails, so I was quite surprised, and maybe it was more so serendipity, that you had caught up to emails, read mine, and had a planned recorded episode and released the episode all within a week's time of my email. I was thinking it would be 2 to 3 months, but for the trillionth time, I'm proudly admitting that I'm wrong, and my best thinking got me here. Ha ha ha. Oh wells. My motivation factors, I stated, aren't black and white like thinking, but more like a scale of justice. And I've also come to see, for me in the program, that sexuality is an expression of spirituality, and especially physical intimacy an expression of spirituality at the moment, my sponsor taught me. So before physical intimacy, get spiritual by whatever means as to lower my inner child's view of physical intimacy. If I don't, my pre-recovery or even early mid-recovery-like view of physical intimacy can weigh quite heavy. All to say, there's always the inner child view of status gaining, pleasing others on one side of the scale, while there's also being of service, humility, gratitude, and other program spiritual principles on the other side of the scale. That comes from my adult-informed spiritual side. So before the interview, I'll get to a spiritual place and talk it over with my sponsor. There's a section here on music that I'll be sharing at the end of this episode, so I'm going to skip that paragraph. Really looking forward to sharing my journey. The former director at the ISO shared at a meeting one time that if the SAA program could be summed up in one sentence, it's in how it works. And that part says, the point is we were willing to grow along spiritual lines. My journey has multiple times been about living off my past surrenders to the program. I love resting on my past growth. But instead, that sentence in how it works helps me be much more about where I need to grow spiritually in my program today. Not in a grandiose, hard-nosed, oh my God, I'm not growing, but in a balanced, objective, grace-filled way. I regret not being succinct here, but I love this program so much that this all just comes out. Best, signed M. And yeah, I really love the email, and along with what he said in the email and during our conversation, he did talk about the former director of the ISO sharing at a meeting in Austin, Texas, about the line from How It Works. And so I wanted to use that as the reading for this episode. And so many of us hear this a lot at our meetings. It comes right after reading the 12 steps. And so just after step 12, it says, many of us exclaimed, what an order! I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, and C, that God could and would if he were sought. And in our meetings, we've changed it to our description of the addict, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were sex addicts and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our sex addiction. And C, that God could and would if God were sought. So replacing the he with God, replacing sex addiction for alcoholic or alcoholism. But yeah, this is such a great reading. I've often wondered if the line, the principles we have set down are guides to progress, or the verb to progress. The way I've usually heard it at meetings is more of the noun progress rather than the verb progress. So yeah, I love the reading and was grateful to read it here on this episode. I know I've read this on various other episodes of the podcast, but being that he did mention it in the email and in our conversation, I thought this would make a great reading for the beginning of this episode. Before getting to the recording, the little bit at the beginning of this episode that I chose to use was actually part of our conversation that we had after our official recording was over. But I thought it was so good, I wanted to use it in the context of this episode. And subsequently, there was a section of our conversation after our official recording that I moved back into the body of the whole recording. With all that being said, I do have a few musical selections that we talked about in the episode and in this email. They are the same, as well as another song that I got from a program friend. So I'll be playing those after the recording is over. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with M. I hope you enjoy it.
This program's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So however I can share my part of it, and whether it relates to others or not, but yeah, I'm continually amazed at how great this is.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get us started. I'm
Sure.
very, very excited to have M here on the podcast. And you emailed us, I think, back in August. And
Yes.
we've been having a back and forth on trying to figure out what would be a good time to record. And so welcome, M, to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor to be here.
So you live in Texas?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Are you part of the Austin Fellowship?
No,
Or
Houston. So,
Houston.
but I
Yeah.
have family all over Texas. So, like, instead of just being like whether one's NorCal or SoCal, whether
Yeah.
it's Dallas, Houston, Texas, I'm just more pro Texas. But I'm not a separationist. But like, yeah, just more state pride than necessarily particular city pride.
Nice, nice. And how long have you been in program?
10.5 years. Whether my first meeting was in May or April, I don't exactly remember, but
Mm-hmm.
sometime May or April of 2015.
Nice. Yeah, I can remember mine being November of 2002, but I don't remember if it was
Hmm.
at the beginning of the month, at the end of the month. Coming into the program is very hazy, just a lot of emotions going on. So I didn't really remember a lot from the early stuff, but yeah.
I don't say this to date you, but I'll date me. I had just turned 29 probably.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Were you of a similar age at that
Yeah,
time
yeah.
or?
I think I was probably about 32.
Okay.
I know for a fact that I had my 30th birthday, and a couple of my friends got me a porn magazine. And so yeah, I know that I was definitely not in program at that time, but it was just a few years after that. So,
My 30th birthday, similarly, though I was in the program for about a year. I think it was a big dance party and drinking, and I look back now, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
so before we get too far in, most of the time I usually like to introduce our guests by talking about the 3 circles and to see what kind of behaviors are in your inner, middle, and outer circle. Are you comfortable sharing that?
Sure. And I'll start off by saying at first, I rarely look at my circles. I rarely use them. I know my inner, but just as time's gone on, I just don't look at it anymore. But quickly, just by saying early on, I had far too many things on my inner circle. It was like a straight jacket.
Ooh, yeah.
So it was important for me over time to simplify it, but make it broad enough, but also clearly accountable. So I had to look at it. I didn't look at it in 5, 6 years, but my inner circle is masturbation, porn, sex outside of a committed relationship, fetish activities, and alcohol.
Oh,
And
okay.
I came into AA 3 years after coming into SAA, so I added that in there. So what my inner circle is like now that I'm thankful my sponsor has is where I would say maybe 6, 7 years ago, if I saw one image, I may be like, oh my gosh, I've acted out. I'm just going to go full Monty. And where he's taught me now, it's more like, okay, because you saw an image doesn't mean anything. Let's talk about it and you decide. So that has been very helpful for understanding some of that gray area in me.
Yeah.
So my middle circle, don't even think about it, but what I put at the time, isolating, sexual fantasizing, objectifying, lying. That's a big one for me, I'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
I lied well before I acted out, well before. So lying is a big one. Overeating. Before I came into the program, I had 60 more pounds on me. So that just all forms of self-care diminishing. That's a part of my history. I put asking anyone to do any of my inner circle behaviors.
Okay.
So I would do that when I was dating. And then I also have obsessing. So
Mm.
whether it be getting too far down whether it be a news rabbit hole, a sports rabbit hole, where I'm out of balance, that is
Yeah,
definitely middle circle.
that's a good one.
So yeah, no, just I've always believed I can still relate to where it says like I'm the director and everyone else is on a stage telling people where to go. I thought self-will was my greatest asset. So like that obsessing is a huge one for me.
Yeah.
My outer circle, SAA meetings,
Mm-hmm.
AA meetings, I have connection to family through the program. I came into the program single, never had dated anyone seriously. I dated in the program, married, have a son, have another one to be born in a month from now.
Nice.
So just any connection, and it's so healed everything. Spiritual things for me, that's church, a morning and evening spiritual routine. I try to send a gratitude text a few times a week. An evening routine, my through couples therapy or marriage therapy before we got married. My wife and I learned we ask each other three questions every night. For some reason, this has always stuck. So we ask ourselves, what'd you like about our relationship today? What could we have improved upon today? And how can I help you tomorrow? For some
Nice.
reason, that has always stuck, and that's a big part of what we do. And then working out. So, whether that as simple as I ran forever, I played tennis forever. So, just some type of physical exercise. And there I probably have so many other things in my outer circle, but the program has so simplified my life that I have such a simpler life. So, I try to keep my circles simple as well.
Yeah, nice. And while we're thinking about that, I was wondering if you could go into kind of your background, what life was like for you growing up, and what got you
Sure,
into this
sure.
program.
No, no, yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
no. So I did a Experience Strength and Hope at a meeting 3 years ago. So I reread it
Oh, nice.
right
Yeah.
before this. So of short, my first 10 years of my life were wonderful. I couldn't think of anything wrong. I had two loving parents. I had an older brother, 2 years older. We moved around a lot for my father's job, but I didn't know any different. I made friends everywhere we moved. Life was great. So I'm 39 today. So 1996, after the Atlanta Olympics, we moved to Dallas to the DFW area. And that was the final move that we didn't make friends. My brother and
Mm.
I did not make friends. I was bullied. He was bullied, whether it was for not knowing sexual terms, whether it was for I stuttered a bit. My brother, I didn't know at the time, had Asperger's, so he couldn't help some of the stuff he was doing. And by the time, literally over a 2 year period, I was happy, normal, had all these friends. And then by the age of almost 12, I say age 11, I decided who I was not enough. Just
Mm.
unconsciously, that like I needed to create a whole different version of M. And so then, literally for sixth grade all the way through high school, I lied, cheated, stole, primarily through grandiose lying.
Hmm.
I did
Hmm.
whatever I could do to uplift myself to balance it out. So I thought I was down here. I wanted to be so high up and perfect, make perfect scores, which I obviously didn't. All these lies just to equalize everything. So in my first step, I said lying was my first addiction, and it sure as hell was
Yeah. Yeah.
lying well before everything. Sexual acting out. So that wasn't also the best time to hide and lie everything because just with puberty and everything. So
Hmm.
anything sexually I repressed, pushed down. And of course, as I know now, it comes out sideways. So how it came out sideways for me was voyeurism.
Yeah. Okay.
So how it came out sideways for me was a few particular fetish behaviors that I would voyeur girls doing or follow them to the restroom, hear outside to see if I could hear them doing that. My particular acting out behavior is with large, obese, heavyset women,
Hmm.
just was. I'll come to find out later why that may have been. But anyway, just so I say that because probably in 10th grade, I voyeured my second cousin, I think she is, second
Hmm.
cousin and a second aunt doing that. I would smell the toilet seat after they would use it in our house, just like behaviors like that. But I think I even looked at porn, and of course, it was obese women porn, but
Hmm.
it was never my obsession. It never totally took over my life. It was just there, but like probably 20 times, maybe these type of things, but I lied thousands of times. So then I went off to college, and then I thought, okay, I didn't know that I couldn't change locations and be a different person.
Hmm.
I didn't know the phrase, wherever you go, there I am. So I did do a lot of great things out in college for my first 3 years. I became the person I wanted to be and all these other stuff. However, because I had never dealt with the original I was not worthy part, whenever life happens and goes like
Yeah.
whenever a wind blows, I fell over. So for me, that was law school entrance exams, the LSAT. I thought I was going to do all these great things based off of my grades. And then when I got my first practice test back, and I didn't do that, but the person who wasn't even going to law school got exceptionally high score. I then fell back on my main behavior, which was lying
Hmm.
about everything. I lied throughout all my senior year, didn't do well on the LSATs at all. I had to have my parents come out and literally see me a few times. Just I was in such a depression because I had done so well in school. I was able to take an MBA class as an undergrad,
Okay.
and oddly enough, I failed that class because I didn't do the work. I was in such a depression. So my low point before acting out low points was literally like 4 days before I was to graduate. I had the business school tell me, you failed this class. You're not going to graduate. And I already had all family coming out. So I had to call my parents and tell them. That was
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very hard for a 22-year-old M to do. Because lying didn't work anymore, that's when acting out took over. And
Gotcha.
then from 22 to 28, acting out was my life. I gained 60 pounds. I did one night stands. I moved to a different state, but I did many one night stands, unprotected sex. It's by luck or grace that I don't have any STDs
Yeah.
or a child out of wedlock. It's by no character virtue. I looked at so much fetish porn. I paid for a fetish model to do a fetish behavior one time. And all the while at the same time, I tried to date normally, but
Hmm.
I was just using that as another way of acting out. I thought women were prude if they didn't want to have sex after the fifth date or fourth date, like just all this crazy, crazy self-will run riot was me. During these times, I would say, though I was raised, I would say Christian Methodist, I had said I was more agnostic, spiritual, not religious, whatever Match.com profile term I probably used at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I dated based off of a resume. What then happened was I had acting out and work as my life. So I had a work opportunity to move to Houston. I don't have family here, but I come to find back there were so many higher power movements. I moved to Houston. This was 2014, end of March, and I called my mother and father. I knew they met in Houston. So
Mm.
I called them to say, hey, I moved to Houston. Our apartment locator has found me a place here. And they said, don't you know that where you lived is less than a mile from the church where we met at?
Oh,
I said,
wow.
no, I didn't know that. So there's so much more there. So anyway, so then much of 2014, I was still acting out all the time, but I tried to go back to church for the first time in 10 years, but I viewed it as like a scales of justice, that I have more doubts than beliefs. And finding a safe spiritual place to express that was amazing. And then I hit another bottom where I tried to act out with a large female, and just the dichotomy of that versus the spiritual life I saw others living
Mm-hmm.
made me to tell a pastor who got me into counseling. But how I got into the program was a particular Bible study. And this particular man, his prayer requests were so much deeper than everyone else's. And he's a spinning image of my brother, has Asperger's and these other things. So I remember very clearly this was March or April 2015. I told him for some reason at a bar, oddly enough, that I couldn't stop looking at porn. And I kid you not, he's reached his hand across the table and said, let me tell you about SAA. He was a member of the program and I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was my life, my 28 years before the program. 10 years were, first 10 years were wonderful. Next 18 were so much lying and self-will driven. And that phrase, my best thinking got me here, is sure as heck me.
Yeah. Yeah. So after he told you about SAA, how long was it until you made it to your first meeting, and what was that like?
That is a good question. So I know he told me 4 or 5 times, probably 3 to 5 weeks to get me to a meeting, and I probably came up with different reasons not to. So my first meeting was a Thursday night, 7:30 meeting, and oddly enough, it was a first step.
Mm-hmm.
So my first meeting was hearing someone's first step, and I remember vividly thinking, man, not depravity or anything like that, but just the honesty that it took to share that.
Yeah.
And still, without a doubt, I have never heard anything like the honesty that's shared in SAA rooms. It's not even close. Orders of magnitude, not even close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And after that first meeting, my next 4 months, summer of 2015, I lost my job, not due to acting out, but it certainly didn't help. But
Yeah.
you're doing a layoff. So I was looking for work. I was going to that meeting and then a daily or a Monday through Friday noon meeting, still acting out all the time. No one told me really how to get a sponsor, but this person was really helping me. He was a gift from my higher power. How I got my first sponsor was I went to a fellowship one night after this Thursday night meeting. This was probably August 2015. And I asked someone who I wanted to be my sponsor if he could be my sponsor. He said no, he had too many sponsees. But another higher power movement, a 60-year-old gay man reached his hand, turned around and said, I would be willing to be your sponsor. And that man, he saved my life. He was my sponsor for my first 5 years in here, and then in AA as well too.
He sponsored
I
you
could keep
in both?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I could keep talking on like this. So like yeah,
Yeah.
he sponsored me in SAA, and then eventually after I finished working the steps the first time, it took me another while to realize I needed to go to AA, but he had been in AA first before coming
Hmm.
into SAA. So then probably October 2015, I literally wrote my first step all in one sitting
Oh, wow.
just to get it. That's what
Yeah.
I remember looking back on. And I believe I did. That's the story I tell myself. I did. And of course, after that, I didn't look at it for another 4 months just because I
Hmm.
went so much energy out. My sponsor was a wise, kind, very kind man. He said, "M, it's there, but it's not." So
Hmm.
what I make up he meant by that was, I know you're still acting out, but you need to learn what you need to learn about honesty to get there. And so, how I view each step is those principles. He taught me each step has a spiritual principle associated
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it. And that is still how I've most identified it. The first step is honesty. And that is still by far my hardest step because I had 10 years of lying before acting out took over my life.
Hmm.
So I had to learn how to be honest in the program and literally say this to people, to sponsors today. Like, I have learned everything through y'all. Like, literally, I have learned to be honest through those first 9 months before I hit my bottom, but literally, how to be emotional, how to check in when one acts out, when a sobriety is noted, when divorce or whatever. Like, I had to learn that honesty. And my bottom, I say, was February 15th, 2016, where once again crossed other lines where on a work trip I acted out for all 5 days of it. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
ever done that before. Acted out on a plane. I had never done that. Acted out on a restroom. Never done that. I think I got back on a Monday. Then from like noon to 4:40, I acted out again. And I said, why 4:40 is appointment? Because my therapy appointment was at 5.
Ah,
So
yep.
literally, I got myself ready, go in, and for some reason, again, I think whether I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, but for some reason, again, honesty is the only thing that has worked. So I was honest about what I had done, and she had said, "M, if you continue this, I would recommend you for it was outpatient or inpatient. It was something like that, and it was one of those things I realized." Am I really that bad?
Mm.
And of course I was, but I just never realized it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So from then on, for the next 45 days until I had acted out again, like the longest stretch I'd ever had sober, probably since I really acted out, was maybe 2.5 weeks. And that was during the 4 months after I wrote my first step. But I did things I had never done before. I journaled. I'd never done that before. I stopped acting out by going to a meeting. I'd never done that before. So there was many firsts for me in there. And then I gave my first step at a big meeting in Houston, a big meeting at the time. It had 70 or 60 to 80 men.
Yeah. That's pretty big.
And another higher power moment happened that after I gave that first step, a fellow member said, "M, there's someone else who gave his first step 2 weeks before I was there, but you two would be great accountability partners."
Hmm.
And we keep up every week since, not accountability wise, but like I've known him for 9 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like after that, I'm so thankful with my sponsor's AA background in the sense of learning the X's and O's, the fundamentals of step work. I
Hmm.
still very much believe that. And like it was as a revelation as everything. I could go on, but like it's so healed all of my past up to college or the best that it could. Oh my gosh, that like I'll give you my step 5 took 6 months.
Oh, geez.
And
Wow.
so it was just how my sponsor did it. So how
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
did it was every resentment, harm, fear. I think there's another one. We would go line by line
Hmm.
and we would do it an hour every week. So literally for an hour every week, we would go line by line.
Yeah.
And I needed that to relieve it all, but to also let it sink in.
Hmm.
It worked beautifully. And this thing he always told me was, you got to be kinder to yourself. And just, I've learned so much kindness and grace from him. And I can tell there's so many step nine miracles. I'll just tell you a few. I
Yeah.
went out of state to do an in-person one. I went to a meeting before because I was going to do it with one of my two main acting out partners. She was very triggering for me. I met her at a coffee house, and before I gave my amends, she said, "M, when I got your message on Facebook, I wasn't going to meet up with you because of who you were, what you did. But when I read it, I was next to my best friend, and that best friend was in AA.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
yeah, no, seriously, and
Yeah.
that best friend said, "Hey, you should probably go and do it with M."
Hmm.
Because probably made up that person had done it. So anyway, that was one of the many. But the second one was my other acting out partner who I was going to see up there, but she never got back to me. So anyway, I went back to Houston. We never I thought, okay, nothing's going to come of it. But probably a month later, my mother called before a therapy session and she said, "M, I had someone reach out to me and it was that acting out partner." I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" She said, "Oh, she reached out to me because you had messaged her. She can't get a hold of you, but she remembered your last name. I have a unique
Hmm.
last name. So she wants to talk to you." So my higher power, I make it my higher power made an amends happen. And I was able to chat with her and it went well. So like
Nice.
all of the stuff, the promises, all of that crap ended up being true for me. So I would say my true work for the steps, if I include my first sponsor, it was August 2015 and I ended it December 2017. I had 18, 19 months of sobriety through that time. And everything was a miracle. Though I'll try to keep the singleness of purpose here.
Yeah.
But to say that I probably put in my middle circle one time drinking more than two drinks. But anyway, alcohol is a solvent to my sex addiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
so much so. And thankfully, early on, I had an old timer who probably came to the program in the 91, 92. He said something, it was basically like attracts like, that if I'm unhealthy, I will attract similarly unhealthy people.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
I'm unhealthy and I attract a healthy person, they probably won't stay. So I say that because by the time this is no shade on people who I dated because I was by far unhealthy here. I had dated the healthiest gal I had ever dated by a long ways, but she did a fetish behavior of mine just as
Hmm.
her natural thing. I'm like, ah, that's not good. Maybe I'll push it aside. Maybe it'll go away. Then she drank and we would have sex after we drank. I'm like, ah, I know this is not a normal feeling. I know this isn't too good. So anyway, I broke up with her because I knew there was something more for me. I didn't know what that was, but I needed more growth in me. I didn't know what that was. And thankfully, I found it in my sobriety date in AA is April 28th, 29th, 2018.
Okay.
Because out of the many times I drank and I almost acted out. But between probably, say, February 2018 for the next year and a half, so this was why I emailed it. I couldn't get more than 100 days sober. I
Gotcha. Yeah.
probably acting out 10 to 20 times. I tried literally everything. I got a second therapist, did EMDR, new meetings, new meditation books. This whole time, my quote primary therapist kept saying, "It's obvious you need to rework the steps in SAA with a new sponsor."
Hmm.
But because I had so much loyalty to my first sponsor, who I still say my life, I thought, okay, maybe if I just try a little harder, I can do these different things. But I literally tried everything. It didn't work. I cried uncle finally when I started dating my now wife. Again, another thing of doing things I thought I would never do. And like I literally tried like living at another program brother's home for 2 days
Hmm.
because I'd acted out for 2 days in a row and I got scared. I said, this isn't working and I don't want to put my then girlfriend through this. And my girlfriend was still by far the healthiest person, still as I've ever dated. It's a whole nother podcast episode of dating and recovery,
Yeah, yeah.
at least for me. But I knew at that time that because SAA was the most important thing in my life, anyone who couldn't accept that and accept me, she was vulnerable with me on our first date. She had challenges finishing college, depression, and went back and finished. And I was like, man, I like this. I knew what this vulnerability feels like. So I told her of importance of the program. I didn't give her my first step, but just had a high level step on my third date or after our second date, I think. And then I could say everything ever since then. She's been nothing but loving, supporting. She never asks for great details or anything. And she's a gift of the program. So, anyway, so
Nice.
just I knew that about her then. So I met my now sponsor at one of the retreats that we have in the Houston area. And I always love the phrase, you want what someone else has. And what he
Yeah.
had, he knows himself so well. I heard his experience, strength, and hope, and in particular, through like an inner child perspective.
Hmm.
Like I wanted to stand up and like clap just after hearing what he shared about him. And I'm like, I need that. So September 2019, we started working together. So my sobriety date is May 30th, 2020. That particular day acted out as I had many other times where all enough, I was on a call with him. Something triggered. Don't know, don't remember what, but I ended up acting out from 9 until 5:30. I only say that because my wife was a restaurant manager at the time, and I had to quote clean up before she got back at 6.
Yeah.
But what I could say though is it's by no virtue again from me that since I've been in the program, I've never had weeks of acting out and not checking it in, months, at most 2 days. That's still bad enough. So what I did after that with her was I called my sponsor. Again, what I said, we talked about what I did. And he taught me then, which was you say what you did, but you say what will you do differently next time.
Mm.
Forgot what I said, but I told that to my wife, my fiance then. But what was important was, and what I've learned is, I didn't know my sobriety date was going to be my sobriety date then.
Yeah.
It just happens to be. And that inner child view or perspective of step work is what I needed to truly heal, to finally go back to not just the onion, but the DNA in there and rebuild that from that 11-year-old who thought he wasn't good enough to a 15-year-old who self-will run riot.
Hmm.
And then when that didn't work, a 22-year-old who lights everything on fire to save them and act out. And I've been sober since.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I know, for me that I've had a number of resets in the program, especially in the beginning, it was like every 3 weeks, it seemed
Mm.
that, I was having relapses. And once I started working the steps, I started gaining a lot of sobriety. And then when I stopped working the steps, once I got to step 12, and my sponsees were not checking in with me, not working on the steps for themselves. I'm not reinforcing the steps. I backslid pretty hard. And
Mm.
yeah, I did have to reevaluate, look at doing the steps again. And this time I did a different focus. I identify as intimacy avoidant. And
Okay.
so yeah, I worked the steps through all of my intimacy avoidance behaviors as well as my acting out behaviors. And that gave me some new insight on a lot of stuff. I've had issues with the way I redefined my circles a few years ago to include some of my avoidance behaviors. And the beginning of this year, there's a lot of stuff going on. I have been in avoidance. And so having to do that reset again it was hard, but I'm feeling good about it. It made me reevaluate a couple of the things that I had been doing. within my inner circle, I'd looked at having 30 days without an intimate contact with my wife, and that doesn't need to mean sexual. Just when we're off leading separate lives, watching different shows, not having meaningful conversations, that we tend to drift apart from each other. And that was the case earlier on this year. It's like, oh, yeah, I need to
Mm.
get back on track and find the things that I can do to reconnect.
What I could say that I've learned in my journey is if I sexually act out, that's just the end of a series of events, whether they're long or short. And what sobriety has done, or step work, is it's made me go further and further back on those chain of events
Mm-hmm.
to deal with or to address emotions, whether it be character defects in 6 and 7, whether it be resentments in 5, anger. I know today if I act out, whether it's avoiding, not honest, and doing or addressing that, acting out is a canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, yeah.
And the main thing I never knew was I came in here to stop acting out. There's a phrase in the big book that I like, but that acting out is but a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to say, like, acting out is just the tip, is the ice that you see above the water line. And that whole iceberg is that big mass that's underneath
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ice. That's my lying, all my bullying, hurt, the harm I did others. And that's where I love it. Says the steps mention sex addiction only once in the first step, but it's 2 through 12 never mention it at all. So like
Yeah.
that's the thing that I feel is like one of the most undersold things about the program.
Yeah. So the pivot that I wanted to make was
Sure.
specifically about Houston. You had mentioned the noon meetings, and do you go to the Houston noon Zoom meeting at all?
Maybe once in the last 6 months when I worked from home more during the pandemic, I did, but I know some of the quote Houston based people on
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I occasionally make it to that one. That one is,
Oh,
2 hours ahead of me, so it's 10 a.m. for me. But yeah, I've jumped onto that meeting a number of times. A lot of people get confused between, we call our noon meeting the noon room. Officially up on the SAA website, our meeting doesn't say noon Zoom, but that's kind of how we officially call it. But there is the noon Houston Zoom. And
ah,
so I know people get kind of confused between the two, but yeah, it's a great meeting and some really great people in there.
it is. Oddly enough, like I think on Wednesdays, I think we have 5 different noon meetings
Hmm.
just in the Houston area, but that's just the one time. But like, yeah, like I feel so blessed. Another higher power thing again, where I moved wasn't just the church where my parents met at, where I we found spirituality. Got, I think my higher power brought me back to the program, but literally there's that big 60 to 80 person meeting on Sunday nights was literally like a mile and a quarter from where I
Oh,
live.
nice,
So I was
nice,
just, again, without any planning on my own, I had all these meetings nearby me too.
nice. Yeah, that reminds me of our Saturday morning meeting up in San Francisco
What fell
when,
into that?
yeah, that one pre-pandemic, I can remember that meeting getting up to about 120 people in person. It was awesome. Post-pandemic, they've changed rooms. The room isn't nearly as big as it was before. It's a different location. I have a hard time parking there, so I don't go there all that often. And for me, it's an hour drive to get to that meeting. But there's something really awesome about large meetings like that and just
Oh,
the
yes.
energy. I usually kind of do a mixture of meetings as I love smaller meetings because
Same.
the intimacy that you get in that is really incredible. But the larger meetings, there's a lot more sobriety, just the overall energy and vibe of it. I get something out of that. And I love hearing different areas of the country where they've got these larger meetings, and Houston, being the hub of the ISO. So
Uh,
there's plenty going on there.
A thing I never knew until I got there. Yeah, that I say, hey, quote, I would say the parent company, but like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
headquartered there. So yeah, so the former heads of the ISO would go to that Sunday night meeting where I gave my first step, and Quick question before I say
Mhm.
another thing. It was, have you found meetings are back to quote pre-pandemic levels
Um,
once you go to?
some of them are approaching. Definitely
Okay.
my home meeting. When you mentioned the Sunday night meeting, my home meeting, whenever we would do first steps, our numbers were a lot higher than usual. And so there were a number of first steps that were 50 to 60 people. But kind of an average pre pandemic was about 35 to 40. That meeting, when we came back from the pandemic, it was about 6 to 8 people for a long time. We're now averaging about 25, almost 25 to 30. So we're not quite back at the same level. We also have a Zoom meeting at the same time for that meeting. So some of the people still prefer to do the Zoom meeting. We didn't do a hybrid. We just split them. So some people at the same time on Thursday nights will either be on the Zoom or in person. But some of the other meetings that I've seen, I know our San Jose morning meeting is about between 30 and 50 people again. That one is pretty much what it was like pre-pandemic. But yeah, most of our other meetings that I've seen in person are usually between 10 and 20, and it's getting pretty close.
Okay. I'm not going to speak for all of the Houston area intergroup meetings, but it just anecdotally from what I've seen and from those I've asked that it's back to pre-pandemic levels. So that big 60 to 80 person Sunday night meeting, it's not there, but some of those people have gone to other meetings, but just
Hmm.
like just in general, I could say, yeah, it's back to pre-pandemic levels, but because they had so many, as you said, so much sobriety there, we had a few former ISO directors there,
Hmm.
and one in particular, I guess my great grand sponsor,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
he writes haikus about SAA, like no,
Hmm.
like very interesting, but love him. He said something I never forgot, but he said many things, but one of them was if you can get the whole point of the program down to one sentence, it's in how it works. And it says the whole point is we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. He said, like,
Hmm.
you could do the program sentence, that's it to him.
Yeah.
And I have found that to be true. So when you're trying to say, like, after you finish step 12, backslid. So for
Hmm.
me, like, after my backsliding, I've tried to think of where do I need to grow spiritually in the program? I could
Hmm.
say maybe
Hmm.
for the first year or two, I did that far too much doggedly, but like these last 3 years, 4 years, what is that phrase? When the student is ready, the teacher will
It will
appear.
appear. Yeah.
So it's been like that. So I've read Drop the Rock for the first time. I
Oh,
had it
yeah.
on my bookshelf forever, never read it. That's amazing.
Hmm.
I'm reading the step 10 version of that. It's the Drop the Rock, the ripple effect.
Ooh, cool. I haven't heard that one, so I will
It
check that one out.
I'm just about finished with it, but like that's really good too. So am I continuing to grow spiritually through step work and service and other things? So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, looking at steps 2 and 3, I think that was a stumbling block for me coming into the program is that I wasn't willing to grow spiritually.
Oh,
I had that area of my life walled off, and then once I opened up to the willingness, then that's where the change is for me. And so when you mention that line from how it works, it's like, yeah, that totally makes sense.
and see the thing is, if I had not started my spiritual journey a year before entering the program, I would have been in the exact same place without a doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
What's odd is I don't claim to be young anymore, but like that Bible study where someone in there was a member of the program and I didn't know.
Hmm.
That same Bible study that may have had like 10 men in total. There were spouses and girls in there at the same time too, but like in total, two of them have independently found themselves in SAA.
Hmm.
They knew I was in the program. So like that's at least a 40% hit rate.
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many other men in the program I've seen at churches. It just happened to be in the church I went to, or now one's up here, or at a mall, at a Costco.
Hmm.
I had another one recently where I work before we gave a big presentation to our employees. someone went up to me and it was like M. I'm like, huh. I now have someone in the fellowship that worked with me.
Hmm.
He was hired 3 months before. I've had my wife's best friend from high school, her husband qualifies for the program. My brother has now realized he qualifies. So I
Hmm.
just say this to me like you may have heard this too, like if it was just as big as AA or whatnot, just as accepted, like it would fill stadiums filled. And just like
Yeah.
my small sample size, it is pervasive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things, with the podcast that, we're trying to get the word out. And so people in isolated pockets that don't have other people in programs to let them know, hey, there's this SAA program you might want to check out, is they'll be searching on social media on, Spotify or YouTube and find the podcast and start listening. It's like, oh wow, there's a program for what I am, and they find their way to the meetings. So yeah, it's an amazing gift that we're just sharing our stories and getting our name out there to let people know that there is a place for recovery.
There is. I didn't find you till 9 months ago, 8 months
Yeah,
ago,
yeah, I was
5 months.
meaning
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ask you about that.
Whatever
Yeah,
I
yeah.
shared in there, it was that. And Houston has a early bird meetings at
Hmm.
6:30. That'd be 4:30. That's far too early of an early bird, but like it has 50 men or 50 people on there.
Dang.
So I think one of them called from out of state, or maybe made him from the Houston Noon Zoom. And anyway, I took him to a meeting one day when he had a work thing here in Houston. But like anyway, like he's shown me a few different things. I think he was the one that told me about you.
Yeah.
And I'm not one who starts from like episode one. I
Hmm.
want to see more of the recent ones where like one like quote has time to work out their kinks or just like see
Yeah.
what's the current flow of it.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, I'm like, this is an extension of the program for
Yeah,
me.
exactly. Love the topics and things that we covered in the first year of the podcast, but I listened back to them. It was just like, ooh, I could have done so much better with editing that one or doing a lot of stuff. But I still refer people back to, some of the earlier episodes. Episode number 4, we talked about the 3 circles, and just because so many of us in program know what the 3 circles are, but
Mhm.
if someone is just learning about the program and they keep hearing us talking about the three
Yes.
circles, it's like, what the hell are they talking about? So I was always point them back to the beginning of the earlier episodes because there's a lot of groundwork there. But yeah, this podcast you don't need to listen to in order. I know that several people have found it. Listen to a couple of recent ones and then go back to the beginning and then get caught up, and then yeah, it's kind of whatever works for you. There's certain topics, certain types of episodes, all the first step episodes, the Joe and Charlie episodes.
Yes.
So yeah, there's lots of different things. I had a lot of brainstorming ideas in the years that we were forming what the podcast would be, and kind of, I don't want it to be the same thing week after week, but I want it to have a similar format week after week. So there is some familiarity, but wanted to be able to change up different topics. And when you brought up dating in program,
Oh,
it's
yes.
something that has come up a couple of times, and I would love to do a topic discussion on that. Yeah, it's not something that is part of my story, so I
Oh, yeah,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
about it. And so, yeah, I would love to get these different topics out there, and that one would be an awesome one to explore.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I don't want to say I was terminally unique in that I
Yeah.
but like may have been or close to it. But yeah, it's something that's not talked about as much, but like in the Houston area, the intergroup puts on step workshops.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so like we have primarily step one and then four. So like for step four, there was 25 people there, and then there's a good percentage of them you could tell were mid to late 20s.
Hmm.
And I was so happy to see them there. But like when I came in, the meetings I attended, there was not many other people like me. So
Hmm.
a lot of the things of dating. So for instance, one of the ones my sponsor first told me was don't date until after step five, because
Hmm.
after step five, you will be a different person. I didn't follow that in steps 1 and 2, but like I can say that was totally true. I was a different person after step five.
Hmm.
6 months after, it took 6 months, but like that was true. And then what I've come to see for me in dating was like I treat others how I treat myself.
Mm. Hmm.
So if I
Hmm.
treat myself like crap, I'll treat other people like crap. And
Yeah, yeah.
and vice versa. So again, it's only through step work that I was able to be kind, nice, and then heal, and then especially recognize those emotions as for me through an inner child viewpoint. And one of the things I also learned in dating was someone had told me you'll connect with someone who has also worked on themselves and continues to work on themselves. And I'm so thankful my wife was that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'm so thankful again, is by no virtue of myself that all the other people that I tried to date, I knew not to go further. And don't get me wrong, probably 80% of the time they ended it, but like I knew not to go further because I knew I needed to do more work on myself.
Nice. When you're mentioning workshops
Yes.
that the intergroup was doing, you and I have been texting or emailing back and forth about retreat stuff.
Yes.
So, yeah, I've been part of the retreat committee for the Bay Area for the past 10 years or so. So it sounded like you guys were just
Yeah.
starting or restarting.
Good point. Yeah. So restarting. So I'll send you the announcement when it's formally there, but like it's the co-chair, I guess. But
Hmm.
effectively, there was a retreat for 8 years from 12 to 2020. I went
Hmm.
to 4 or 5 of those during that time. It was great and good, but it was primarily step-based workshops, working the steps at the workshop. And then they've pivoted a bit to make it like a hybrid approach of half step workshop, half more convention with speakers on certain
Hmm.
topics. So thankfully, just in my work, I hadn't heard anyone else reach out to other areas to say, what retreats do y'all put on? Let's
Uh-huh.
see what
Uh-huh.
you do. So when I heard you did this, that's why I reached out.
Yeah, yeah. I've been going through all my old emails and know that I've got retreat programs going back, 5 or 6 years. And I've been deleting a lot of that stuff because email that we use, it stores all of our messages online and all of our files online. So if I get rid of it in my email, I know that I can find it later. But typically we'll do a speaker in the morning and the evening for Saturday. And then our workshops, we usually have at least three at a time and sometimes up to five at a time. So people can kind of pick and choose.
I love that.
Sometimes I wish that I was able to duplicate myself so I could be in multiple workshops at the same time. So sometimes picking and choosing is hard. But yeah, we usually try to make sure that the steps are covered in the various sessions and then different aspects of the program, sometimes outer circle stuff. So I've done a number of workshops on music and recovery.
How long did it take you before you realized for you that music was your higher power?
Realizing it was when I got to step two and started doing writing.
Okay.
When you talked about the 360,
Yes.
returning back to where we were, music was
Yes.
always a part of me, and it was something
Mm,
that's been passed down from generations in my family.
mm,
And so when it came time for a higher power for me, I knew that going to church wasn't going to be in the cards for me. And I was looking at what are the things where I feel something different and I feel
hmm.
connected with something out there. When I've gone to Yosemite, when I've gone out hiking, I just like, whoa, I am just this little tiny speck. I am not the center of the universe, and yeah, I feel this grandiose thing. So that's where my connection with nature is, and with
Yeah.
music. When I'm playing, when I'm going to concerts, I just went to another Viking band last night, Vardruna. They're from Norway, and got to meet up with quite a few people, and we hung out before. Got to see one of my friends from high school. He was there. One of my friends from my home meeting was there, but I didn't see him, so I'm going to see him tomorrow night. So see how he enjoyed it. But going to concerts, I feel an emotional release and feeling outside of myself. And so when it came time to doing step 2, I wrote that I don't know if I necessarily believe in a higher power, but my moments in nature and my moments with music has me connected to something that I can't really understand what it is. And that's all I needed to be able to move forward. And so we try to make sure that there's a good balance, that if we're doing something like mine on music, that we also have something on step 4, step 7, 6 and 7.
Right.
Some people, are gravitating towards whatever step they're going to be working on, and other people want a different aspect of the program. There have been quite a few that I went to that just like, I wasn't quite sure if I would enjoy this workshop, and ended up loving it. And one of them that scared the hell out of me was getting honest about the middle circle. And that one is just like, yes. And a lot of times I've tended to hide out in the middle circle. And when they started talking about things, it's like, ooh, yeah. And I was able to take some of those tools and carry it with me after getting back.
You bring up the middle circle. There was the ISO convention, or yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was in Houston one time in 2019. I went to that, and there was someone from the Bay Area who gave a talk on the middle circle, and I loved
Yeah,
his analogy. He thought of it as like a
the stairs.
stairs going down. Yeah, you may know the person, but
Yep.
like for that's always stood out to me.
Yeah, he was on the episode that I talked about, episode 4 on the 3 circles,
Oh,
and we
okay.
incorporated a little bit
Interesting.
of his workshop into that recording. So,
What I love, what I've been fortunate about my job, and I guess what I know about this person is literally what I saw him Monday night before the pandemic in 2020. He came into a meeting. He was in town for work, but went to a
mhm,
meeting. One of the things, I'm a part of the FIRE movement, I guess, financial independence,
mhm,
retire early. So, I tell my wife one of the things I would love to retire at 50, 49. But like one of the things I would love to do is just go to meetings all throughout the country.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like to travel for work, see what the fellowships in North Carolina are different than Washington State, than Bay Area, than LA. And man, it just makes me so happy. Like growing up, and I thought my purpose was, I don't think I really had one, but it was work focused. Again, it was so self-will driven, but through the program, I know my purpose.
mhm,
It's carry its message to the sex addict who still suffers.
yeah, yeah,
So like when I quote retire from work, I want to do nothing but I'm saying nothing but this, but like I want this to be even more part of my life, sponsor more men,
mhm,
give back. And yeah, I this is still the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. My wife knows this is the most important thing in my life because literally without this, I wouldn't have anything.
yeah. And I remember in your email hearing your humility about wanting to share on the podcast, but not
Yes.
wanting to get the ego. That comes in for me a lot. Number one, in doing the podcast, but also in doing guitar videos out there on YouTube. I want to put this information out there to the world, but am I doing it for self-centered reasons or from the heart? And there's been a couple of times where I've really had to check myself on that. And when reading through your email, and it's just like, oh no, you've got to be on the podcast.
Thank you. No, it,
Got to share your story out.
and thank you for that push. I where I am now, or maybe a few other things I've just to share quickly that the program has. So maybe this was 2019. My parents came into town, and my father is from the Northeast. This is no offense to Northeast people, big mouth, aggressive. He couldn't keep himself quiet. He was like, I have a half brother. I said, what do you mean? So he did the whole ancestry.com, not
Hmm.
23andMe, and just like maybe other people have found out, well, there's some family secrets there. So come to find out, basically, it was my grandfather died before I was born, but he slept with my grandmother's best friend.
Oh,
They had at least one child. My grandfather was an alcoholic. That I was told enough, but I believe he would also qualify for our
yeah.
program.
Yeah, definitely.
And as I've come to know, this is me assuming, but that probably wasn't his first time. And literally, there's two older siblings to him that maybe also was fathered by my grandmother's best friend. I see this as like a generational stewardship, as like ending a generational thing.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course. And I obviously, my son's just turned 2 and one's about to be born, but like I can be a light of honesty. I can be truthful. Maybe this is another podcast episode of those with age with certain children. I don't know
Oh,
if there's
yeah,
one on
yeah.
this. Is when do you tell this? How have you told this? I'm years away from that, but still, like I look forward to ending family secrets.
Yeah, yeah.
I see that I have a great uncle on my mom's side who my grandfather, who's still alive, he's 93, he told me one time, a lot of family secrets are gonna die with me. And that was one where anyway, my great uncle apparently slept with someone. So just I know there's also family history in there too.
Yeah.
All the times I hear of people in their first steps saying that they found Playboy magazines from their family member or friend.
Hmm.
When I think of good old days syndrome, those were not good old days.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So
Yeah.
we've been recording for about an hour.
Oh,
It goes by quickly.
yes.
Was there anything else you wanted to cover before we close this episode out?
Sure. Maybe just two things. I think of all, it's a saying that things that don't keep you sober, it's like knowledge, it's like self-will, it's
Hmm.
consequences, it's other people. I'm sure there's one or two others, but I've heard that enough. And in my own story, that is certainly true. But I want to say meetings don't keep you sober, but maybe to reframe it as like by themselves, they don't keep one sober.
Right,
Do they
right.
help? Oh, of course, but like in conjunction with the main part of the program of doing steps, my goodness,
Hmm.
do they sure as heck help and are a wonderful tool. So that's one. And then maybe, I don't know if I send you a list of my two songs?
No, no.
Okay, sure. So, my wife is an elementary school music teacher. Her whole family is in jam bands. So, my musical spiritual place is peaceful sounds trite, but like to me, peaceful is airy,
Hmm.
is light, is contemplative. So again, this is not meant to be religious, but two songs that I feel are broad enough to make it. So one is a Lauren Daigle song,
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
but the chorus is like "You're gonna be okay." You're gonna be okay. It's like 2.5 minutes. Anyway, it's really beautiful, and I've played that for sponsees that need it. So that's one. And then there's another one, Stephanie Gretzinger,
Hmm.
Gretzinger. She's the one called Morning Song.
Okay.
Anyway, but what I love about it, it's basically it's like it's a new day. I'm waking up to my higher power, and it's another one. It's basically you're gonna be okay,
Hmm.
and that to me is just spiritual, and that spirituality to me is primarily balance.
Hmm.
And that's where I felt my addiction, that phrase that the addiction is placed in neutrality. I feel that. And then maybe just the last thing to share is one of the many things my current sponsors taught me that I've learned is the more I share, whatever emotion or trigger I have, that power will decrease of at least by at least 50%. So like let's say I'm like about 100% angry. Then I'll only be 50% angry after one share. Then I share it again, I'll only be 25% angry. And for me, I have found that to be such a powerful tool where only if I'm triggered or any emotion, I'll only need to share once or twice, check it in on a WhatsApp group.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they're affirming people, which they all are, that's all I need. But just the power of sharing, the power of we. Yeah, I owe my life. I've done all my growing up in this program. I don't think I'm an emotional 39-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm way further along than I was before. So thanks for having me, Jason.
Thanks so much, Em. I'm super grateful that you reached out and that we were able to record this.
Thank you for your service. Have a good night, Jason.
All right, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Many, many thanks to Em for this conversation. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we did talk a lot after our recording had finished. We ended up talking for about an hour and 45 minutes, and a lot of the things at the end of our conversation was actually really good and wanted to use that as part of the main body. And so I was able to make a couple of quick edits and put those back in. But yeah, had such a fantastic time talking to Em. Another thing that I wanted to mention was during our conversation, he talked about the book Drop the Rock, Ripple Effect. And I know of the original book, Drop the Rock, and both of these are Hazelden books, so they are not related to SAA, but a lot of people in our program do use these. So Drop the Rock is a book on removing character defects, and I wanted to read a little summary of that. What does drop the rock mean in recovery? Imagine you are swimming toward a boat called recovery. You're almost there, but something is pulling you under. That rock dragging you down, it's fear, resentment, anger, and self-pity, the emotional weights you carried around in active addiction to help you justify your actions. When you finally let go, you rise. You reach the boat. You begin to heal. And so, yes, I was fully aware of Drop the Rock and using steps 6 and 7 to let go of character defects. The other book that Em mentioned was Drop the Rock, The Ripple Effect. And this one is subtitled Using Step 10 to Work Steps 6 and 7 Every Day. I'll read the summary of that. In this follow-up to Drop the Rock, the author explores the ripple effect that can be created by using Step 10 to practice Steps 6 and 7 every day to avoid picking up the rock, also known as resentment, fear, and self-pity again. And I will be leaving the titles of these books as a reference in the show notes for this episode. And now I wanted to move on to some YouTube comments and emails. There was comments on 3 different videos that said, "Thanks San Francisco, blessing from the Baltics," and some flags. And you're very welcome. Glad to know that the podcast is being heard over in the Baltics. Just a few days ago on episode 173, I got a comment that said, "Help me with my addiction." And someone replied, "Try to attend a meeting and there you may find the help you need." And I will be adding an additional comment on the resource saa-recovery.org, where you can find lots of information about SAA, literature, and how to find meetings. So that sums up YouTube. No new comments on Apple or Spotify, but we also love getting ratings and reviews on Apple and Spotify if you're so inclined. And from there, I wanted to move on to emails and then sharing some songs. A majority of the emails that I've been receiving over the past month have been requests to be guests on the podcast. I've been declining most of these because they are looking to promote things, but I do have one lined up that I'm looking forward to. And so 2 that came in this week. One says, "Hello, I've been listening to the podcast and I need help. I surely haven't been able to do it on my own. I would like to start the process. I wanted to begin by joining the Zoom meetings, or is it possible to obtain the times and link to the Zoom meetings? I've been reading/listening audibly to the Green Book. Can you please advise or guide me? Thank you for your time." And yes, this will be a similar response to the YouTube comment that I'll be providing links to saa-recovery.org. And on episode 173, where I walked through how to find meetings on the new meeting search page. But I will also be providing some Zoom information for particular meetings that I know that occur daily. So thank you so much for the email. Here's another one. It says, "Good morning, Jason. Recently, I caught your interview of a Christian member of SAA. He shared on the subject of purity movements around sexuality within the Christian world and the unintended consequences of how this can create a shame and performance mindset. And before I continue, that would be episode 21 with Tucker, sharing about how the shaming messages from the evangelical purity culture has contributed to his sex addiction. Back to the email. I've experienced a bit of this myself, and I know that even the most well-meaning ideas can have terrible unintended consequences. It bothers me that followers of my faith have such difficulty talking about sexuality openly and without shame. Shame motivation is totally contrary to the Christian message of grace as I understand it. For me, the steps of SAA have radically expanded my understanding of God in a positive way. The perspective for me as a follower is that I never healed perfect or better than others, but I'm on a recovery journey. In a similar vein, it troubles me to hear many people in the program share how they have been burned from any faith orientation through God being presented as angry, legalism, performance, any kind of abuse, especially sexual abuse. Again, all of these messages are contrary to the faith that I now follow. As I did not have any religious or spiritual family environment growing up, I also experienced a complete lack of candid, non-shame information around sex and sexuality. What I did get into was my father's Playboy collection, which had a profound negative impact in my own addiction story. So I'm all for non-shame, age-appropriate, and healthy conversations between parents/caregivers and kids. This is especially poignant as the pornography available today is far, far more explicit than the pornography I grew up with, and in mediums that are more conducive to secrecy. In my worldview, secrecy promotes shame, especially in our addiction. Thank you for this episode of the podcast and keep it going. Signed, D. And yes, thank you so much for that email. I don't know if it's on that episode or another episode. I talked about my own experience of bringing up sexuality with my kid. And at the age of 9, we read an age-appropriate book that has been banned in certain parts of the country. So each parent can decide for themselves what and how they choose to talk about sexuality in a non-judgmental and healthy manner with their children. But the book is called It's Perfectly Normal: Changing Bodies, Growing Up, Sex, and Sexual Health. And for us, it opened up a non-shaming way to talk about sexuality and helped keep an open channel for us talking about that as he's been growing up. So again, that's my experience. Other parents may have other ideas, but I really love the book. And so from there, I wanted to continue with M's email that I read at the beginning of the podcast, where he does have a few musical selections that he talked about in our conversation as well. And as I read that email, I'm going to be playing the samples. The email says, 2 top songs that connected me to my higher power are, and the first is Stephanie Gretzinger, Morning Song, and so I wanted to play that here.
Night turns to morning. You have been waiting, whispering to me. Gently I'm waking. It's the dawn of a new day. You've painted for me, colors exploding, telling our story. And I'm waking up, I'm waking up. I'm waking up, I'm waking up. I'm waking up, I'm waking up. I'm waking up, I'm waking up.
Very beautiful song. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that. The other song that he mentioned was from Lauren Daigle, and have played some of her songs on the podcast before. And this one is called Be Okay.
You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. Oh, Oh, the sun will keep on rising in that old familiar way, and every little thing is gonna be okay. You're gonna be alright, darling, you're gonna be alright, 'cause the stars will keep on shining through the darkest night, and you can know you're gonna be alright. Lift your eyes to the hills, remember where your help comes from. Lift your eyes to the hills, you'll never face a valley alone, 'cause even when your heart is breaking and you've gone and lost your way, you're gonna be okay.
Very, very cool tune. I really, really love listening to her music. So his email says, though I'm Christian, these aren't meant to beat anyone with that stick, but more so to state my preferred spiritual practice has balance, feeling light, fairly quiet, etc., which these songs do for me. So yeah, thank you for those suggestions. While I was editing this episode, I was at a meeting and one of the guys had mentioned a song from a band called Breaking Rust, and the song is called Walk My Way. So I jotted that down and wanted to use that here on the podcast as well. So such a cool song.
Been beat down, but I don't stay low. Got mud on my jeans, still ready to go. Every scar's a story that I survived. I've been through hell, but I'm still alive. They said, slow down, boy, don't go too fast. But I ain't never been one to live in the past. I keep moving forward, never looking back, with a worn out hat and a 6-string Strat. You can kick rocks if you don't like how I talk. I'm gonna keep on talking and walk my walk. Ain't changing my tone, ain't changing my song. I was born this way, been loud too long. You can hate my style, you can roll your eyes, but I ain't slowing down, I was born to rise. So kick them rocks if you don't like how I talk. I'm gonna keep on talking and walk my walk.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I believe that was Mike S. who was on episode 102. But yeah, great song suggestion. With that, I'm going to close out this episode. If you had any songs that are part of your recovery process or have any feedback on any specific episodes, you can reach us at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Or if you wanted to get a hold of me personally, to be a guest on the podcast, have any questions about the program or the podcast, you can reach me at jason@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Next week, I'll be sharing the recording from our guest speaker at the 2025 Giving Thanks event. It was a fantastic share, and I'm really excited to be sharing that. And we also had the SAA and COSA speaker meeting that weekend. I'm still waiting for links to those recordings, but do have quite a few other episodes in the works. So look forward to that. I'm so thankful for you tuning into this episode. And as always, keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.